All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to finish wiring up our app so that our data can be stored and then retrieved from Firebase. So we're using Firebase's Firestore product, and if you remember last time or in a previous video, we set this up so that we can save our objects, and we haven't written anything yet to pull them out, but our app should look something like this, where it just shows a whole bunch of static content. So, and believe it or not, we're getting really close to being able to submit to the App Store. So we'll be doing that coming up soon as well. So the first thing that we're going to do in this video is we're going to actually create a post, verify that that gets saved in our Firestore, and then we're going to write some code to pull that out as well and display it in the app. So to get started, let's just check a couple things. So it looks like we have our post property, the properties on our post object all set up, and looks good. So let's go ahead and in our home controller, let's go ahead and add a button that a user can tap on to create a new post. So to do that, in our setup view function, we're just going to add a button to our navigation bar. So we would say let add button equals UI bar button item, and we can use the system item of dot add. Target will be self, and we don't have a method yet for this, so let's add one now. This will be an @Objective-C prefix here for our function, and we're going to say add new post will be the name of the function. Okay, and so in here we'll just say add new post. All right, then we need to add it to our navigation bar. So the way that we do that is through the navigation item, and we'll put it as the right bar button item equals add button. All right, let's go ahead and run this and see how that looks. All right, so we have a plus button up here. Real quick as well, let's set the title of this. So we can say navigation item dot title equals home. That way it's going to show in the top middle of our navigation bar that you're looking at the home. And let's see, there we go. So right now when you tap on it, nothing happens. That's expected. Let's see if we can change the color. I think we can do this. And we have a predefined primary text color. I can't remember if that's how you set the color on a bar button item, but we'll try it out and see. Yep, so it looks like it changed to a black button. And that's just to match with our color scheme. Our selected tab bar items down here are black, so we'll make that one black as well. Okay, so and then we have our function here. So what we need is a new view controller. Okay, so in our home folder here, we're going to create a new view controller. It'll be a Swift file. We're going to call this compose controller. There we go. We'll import UIKit, and this will be a new class called compose controller, and it will be a subclass of UI view controller. We'll go ahead and override view.load here, and then we'll create our private extension for compose controller, and we're going to define our new function called setup view here. And let's just first set our background color equal to orange. I just like to pick a really strong color that stands out when I'm testing things. And we'll call setup view. So this will be our basic view controller. Back here in our home controller, we can create that. So we'll say let VC equals compose controller. It doesn't take any arguments. We're going to wrap this in a navigation controller. So we'll say let nav equals UI navigation controller with a root view controller, and we'll just pass in our created view controller here. So we'll pass it in right there. And then all we need to do is say present nav animated is true, and our completion will be nil. Let's go ahead and build and run this. Now, what should happen is when we click on the plus button, we should see the orange screen or the orange view pop up from the bottom for us with a navigation bar on the top. So let's do that. There we go. And we automatically get this cool drag to dismiss feature. So that's looking pretty good. Next, let's go ahead and change our background color to match our color scheme. So it should just be the background color. And let's set the title to compose post. And let's set 2 buttons. So the first one will be our post button or our publish button. And these are again UI bar button items. And let's see what we have here. If we have any system one that might work. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. So we'll use the title one here. So let's change the name of our button to be post. The style will be .plain, target will be self, and we need to create a function to handle this. This will have the @Objective-C prefix, and you can know that because inside of here it says @Objective-C and then the name of the method, so that's why we've got to have it. So this will be a function called post button action, and we'll do something cool with that. Let's create a second one here for our cancel button that we'll create in a minute. This will be cancel button action. And the only thing that we want to do when they cancel it is just dismiss this view controller. By calling dismiss, that makes it disappear. It's the same as pulling down on it. So let's go ahead and put post button action in there. And let's create our cancel button. UI bar button, UI bar button item, and there is a .cancel option here, so our target can be self, and the selector will be the cancel button action. Okay, so we've created the 2 buttons, but they're not going to do anything. We also would want to set the tint color on those buttons. Let's see what this area is here. We're missing a parenthesis here on the end. There we go. All right. So let's set our tint color. Post button dot tint color equals color dot primary text color, and we'll just copy this and change this to cancel button here. So that way they'll both be black to match our color scheme. Depending on what you want to do, you may want to have different colors for different states. We're just going to keep it really simple for now. And then what we need to do is put them on our navigation bar. And we do that by using the navigation items properties of right and left bar button items. So the right bar button item is our post button. And our left bar button item is our cancel button. So let's build and run this now, and we should see some things start to take shape. All right, so we have our plus button. We click on that, and there we go. We have our title, cancel, and post. If I click on post, nothing happens because we have not written any code for that. If we click on cancel, it will dismiss our view controller, the same as if we were to pull down on it, and it will dismiss it. So things are looking really good. Now this is a compose controller. We want somebody to be able to type some stuff in there. So to do that, we're going to use a UI text view. So we're going to keep this as simple as we can here. So let's create our private constant for text view, UI text view, no parameters. So there we have our text view. Now down here we can set that up. We're going to, let's first just add it as a subview to our view. So we can say view.add subview, and we'll pass in text view. We'll also want to say translates auto resizing masks into constraints equal to false, because we're going to use anchors to lay this out on the view. So let's do that now. So text view dot leading anchor constraint is going to be equal to the view's leading anchor, but we want to inset it just a little bit. Let's do it by let's go 14 from the edge, and we'll need to set is active equal to true there, and we'll go ahead and copy and paste these down. Trailing anchor, this would be the top anchor, and this one is going to be the height anchor. So for the height anchor, I'm actually going to set it equal to a constant of 400. I'm just taking a guess there at what that might be. We'll have to build and run it and see what that looks like. So, and then this trailing anchor here will need to be a negative 14, because it's going to be coming from the trailing side instead of the leading side. Okay, so now we should see, when we present that compose controller, we should see our text view there. And we'll see what that looks like. There it is. Now, interestingly enough, we see the edges on the left and the right, and when we tap to edit, the keyboard comes up, so that's great. But it's not inset from the top. And that's because we need to put this relative to the safe area layout guide. So let's give that another shot. There we go. So now we can see that it is inset there, and we can type stuff into it. Now, if you're running this on the simulator, you can also just use your keyboard on the computer, but you might ask, well, how can I get the keyboard back? I believe the command to do that is just Command K. We'll show and hide the keyboard. So pretty cool. Okay, so that's all we need to do there. And let's update some properties on our text view to make it look just a little bit cleaner for us. So the first thing we'll do is set our font equal to 18 regular, and then let's set our text color as well. Okay, let's see. And let's also do one more thing. So if they're coming into the compose controller, they're going to want to type. So instead of having to tap on that text area to get the keyboard to show up, we can automatically have the keyboard display without them having to tap on it. So to do that, we're going to override view did appear, and then we'll call super view did appear. We'll pass an animated, and then we'll just say text view dot become first responder. That's how we get keyboard input to show for a text field or a text view, is by calling the become first responder property on the text view. So now if I click the plus, you can see that the cursor is already active there. And in fact, if I click it again with the keyboard enabled, you can see that it will automatically come up for us and we can start to type. So that looks pretty good. Let's write some code to actually create a post. Okay. All right, so we'll come down here to our post button action, and this is where we're going to actually do the creation of our new post object. So when they click on this, we want to make sure that they've actually entered some text. And there is some more robust ways to do this, but for the simplicity's sake, we're just going to write a guard statement. Text equals textView.text. And we're going to use an exclamation point. Text.isEmpty. So what this does is it first makes sure that they've entered text, and then we do a double check here to make sure it's not empty if they didn't just put a space or something like that. So now we have our text. Let's create a post. So to do that, we can say let post equals post with a capital P, an open parenthesis, and we don't want this first one, but we do want the second one with all of these properties that we're going to set. So you just hit enter. Okay. Now, these are all the properties on our post. The text will go in our text property right here, and you can see it's non-optional, which means it has to exist. So we can go ahead and fill that one in with text. Let's see, visible to public. Let's mark that one as false. We want to make sure we can moderate posts before they're visible to everybody. Approved by will be nil. It's not been approved by anyone or denied by anyone. Moderated is false because it has not been moderated. Reported by will just be an empty array of strings. And that's how we create an empty array, just like that. Post number, we'll get to that one in a moment. In fact, let's just set it to, let's actually get rid of it. I don't think we're going to actually need it in this case. We might need it later, but we can re-add that if we do. So I just removed it from our object here. So that means in our compose controller, we don't actually need to have it here in our initializer. Okay. And then we have a bunch of dates that we're going to set. Archived will be false, and archived at is nil. Okay. Now ID will be nil because this is going to be generated by Firebase, so we'll set it to nil. And on the simulator, I'm not logged in. In fact, if you recall, in the scene delegate, we're actually overriding our authentication flow. So for now, we can hard code this data so that we can verify that at least our connection to the database works. And then in a follow-up, we'll actually set some rules on the database and require authentication to be able to access it. So to do that, our author image URL will be nil for now. Our author name, this would just be your name. You can hard code it. I'm going to hard code mine. And later on, we're going to replace this with the user property. And then comment count is 0. Nobody's commented on this post yet. And created by, I'm just going to put test in here for these two. Since this is our test post, it should be a lot easier to find it. Now, these two are actually date fields, but they're marked as a double because we use time intervals. So to get that, I would just say let date equals date with a capital D, a set of parentheses, dot time interval since 1970. Now, I use this because this is the interval between the date value and basically the epoch, 000000 UTC on January 1st, 1970. It's very common, and it's what I like to use for my date objects when I'm storing them, so I don't have to store like a native date object in there. And we'll just pass this in. Now you'll notice that it's a time interval type, but it takes a double. Well, time interval is just an alias for double, so they're the same thing. Okay, so now we have a post. Now we need to actually save it. The way that we do that is we say database, because this is the name of our database class here. We're going to be calling this save function. So we'll say database dot shared. This is a singleton, so we're calling our shared property here. Dot save. So it takes an SMA object, and post is an SMA object. If we look back at our post here, you can see that it conforms to that protocol. So we can pass that in, no problem. And then for the completion handler here, this will take an object and an error. So in here, we'll say guard let error equals error, else we're going to do some stuff in here. So if there is an error, we're going to print it to the console. If there is no error, then we just want to dismiss. And we'll need to say self.dismiss because we're inside of this block here. Okay, so that should be all we need to do. And if we set it all up correctly, we should see an error down here in our log. And the reason for that is because I don't think we've actually set up Firebase's Firestore product yet in the Firebase console, but we'll get to that in a minute. So we'll click our plus button, my first test post, and we'll move this over here. Now I hit post, and nothing happened. Let's take a look and see. Let's put a breakpoint here and walk through our code. If I click post, nothing happens. I feel like I'm missing something. Our cancel button works. There it got called. It looks like it's just trying to process here. Okay, so that's correct. It should just return because there's no text. Okay, let's see what happens this time. Creates our post. Let's put a breakpoint in here. Goes to save. And nothing's happening. We don't even get a response back. So that probably means that we're not handling an error inside of this function. So let's go take a look. Okay, let's try this again. So we can see that it is getting in here. And it's just not setting the data at all. Now, I would have expected an error to come back here, but there is no error there. And I don't see any errors in here either. But I also know that we haven't set it up yet. So let's go back over here. So I've gotten into our Firebase console, and I click on the Cloud Firestore option over here on the left. We'll click Create Database, and we're going to start in test mode. So this lets you read and write to it if you're trying to do it before February 20th of 2021. We will go through and set up rules later on, but this works well enough for us in test mode. You can also change the location depending on where you're at, where your users are going to be. I'm just going to pick US Central since I'm in the US, and that's a pretty central location to where my users may be in the US. The biggest thing to remember is that you can't change it later. So if your users are going to be primarily in Asia or Europe or a particular part of the US, it might make sense to pick a location closer to them to make your requests fire a lot faster. They won't take as long to get data back to your app. Now, when I say it won't take as long, we're not talking about hours here. This is going to be milliseconds. So the time difference is going to be very small, but it can still matter. So this will just go through and set up our security rules. And then once that's completed, we will see our database pull up here. And if we check out our rules area, you'll notice that you can read and write to any document as long as you try to do it before February 20th. So this is fine for testing purposes. So let's hop back over into our project. I'm just going to kill it and rerun it here. And let's see if we can get it to create a post for us. We'll click on the plus. Okay, and then we'll click post. And it looks like it might have worked. Let's check out Firebase in the console here. And yes, it did work. And it looked like there might have been a little bit of a backlog. It created a whole bunch of other ones I think that we were trying to do before we had our database created. So you can see this is the text here and all of our properties. So the next step, now that we know that we're actually able to create a post, is to get those posts and display them here in our home. So to do that, we're going to come over here into our post object. We're going to create an extension of post. And we're going to create a static function. Static just means that we don't actually have to have a post object to call this function. So this will be function get posts. And in here, we'll just call an onComplete at escaping. And in here, we're going to say posts. This will be an array of post objects. Oops. And then we'll have error. That will be an optional error object. So this is how you write a block, a callback, if you will. This is what it's called, and this is what gets sent back when it's completed, because this will be an asynchronous function that happens here. So to write our function, and we're just going to keep things very simple for this bit, we can just say database.shared.db, so we have an instance to our Firebase, .collection. And in here, this can just be our collection name.raw value. And that means that we're going to get our posts here. And we can just say .get documents. And this will have a snapshot completion here with an optional error. And I'm going to open up another project really quickly so that I can reference how we're doing this here. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this code here and paste it into here. All right, so all we're doing is checking to see if we have an error first. If we do, we're going to call our onComplete and then return. Otherwise, we're going to continue through and make sure we actually have documents. If we don't have any documents, again, we'll just return early. Now, I copied and pasted this, so we need to change some things. This should be post. We're going to have an array of post objects, and this should be post as well. All we're doing is we're trying to iterate through every document that we received and convert it or decode it into a post object, and then add it to our array of posts. Now, this is similar to what you'll do for all the different objects in your project. And this is the way we get the data out of Firebase. So now that we have this set up, we can go back to our home controller, and we're going to write a new function in here called load data source. And Then up here at the top, we're going to need to create an array. So we'll have a private var data source equal an array of posts. So we're going to create our empty array of posts. This will be our data source that's going to end up populating our list here, or our table view. And we're going to populate that in this function. So let's call the function after we've called setupView in our view.did_load. And then in here, since we know we're going to get posts, we can say post.getPosts. That's the name of our function that we just wrote. And then these will be our posts, and there will be an error. So this is an optional, it won't show here, but posts is optional, as you can see here. But we need a non-optional, so we're going to say guard let posts equal posts. Otherwise, we're just going to return. And if we have posts, then we're going to say self.dataSource.removeAll. We're going to take everything out of our data source that we currently have. Self.dataSource.append contents of posts. And then we'll say self.tableview.reload data. So this will get our posts, make sure we actually got some back, remove anything that was in our current list of posts, add all the new ones we got back, and then reload our table view to show the new data. But it's not going to show anything yet because we've hard-coded things here. So now that we actually have a data source, instead of returning 50, we'll just return data source.count. Number of sections will stay as 1. And then our configure function on our cell here will actually take a post object. Now in our home controller, we'll need to update this to be post. And in here, we'll just say data source at indexPath.row. So for every row of the table view, we're going to access a post object in our data source, pass it over to our cell to configure it, and then we need to set everything here. So we'll leave the fake placeholder there because the image URL property is nil, but we'll replace Jeremy Skywalker with post.authorname. And the text we can replace as well to be post.text. And in here, we're going to use string interpolation and just say post.commentCount. So it'll say the number of comments here. And for this, we'll just leave that as it is for now. We'll change that in a minute. So we've changed enough data here so we can see that the information that it's pulling is actually what is from the database. Oh, there we go. Now these are all the things that we put on there. You can see the name is populating, the text is populating, and if we want to verify this, these are all the same. Let's just create another post here that just says hello world, or yellow world, I guess. Autocorrect. We'll click post. Now we don't have it set up to automatically refresh yet, so we'll kill this and rerun the app. There we go. Now there's our yellow world post. So that's the basics of how you would create a new post, connect it to Firebase's Firestore product, and load your data back out. And again, we made some changes to our post file. We did this so that we could get our objects out of Firebase's Firestore, and we had already written our code in here to save, but we did create a brand new compose controller which has a text view and a couple buttons on there that allow us to create a post and save that to our database. So that's all for this video, and I hope it's been helpful.